It is Monday evening, the first day of February, and I'm doing a heavyweight roundup video for you guys. 3 or 4 different heavyweight topics that I wanted to cover today. Couldn't be bothered to do them in separate vids. Thought it would be better for you, better for me, if I put them all in one longer format. Let's start with Dereck Chisora versus Pulev. I don't believe the fight's been announced, but the European EBU title governing body, whoever they are, has said that their mandatory fight will be Chisora versus Pulev, and it has been assumed that this fight will definitely take place because seemingly both parties want the fight, and they're obviously both managed, promoted by the same company, the Sauerland brothers, so there shouldn't be much difficulty in making the fight. Apparently Anthony Joshua, a lot of people are saying Chisora ducked Joshua, and we'll come on to that in a second. The EBU statement seems to suggest that Joshua had indicated he wouldn't be fighting for the European title, so as such they've gone to the next opponent on the list to fight Chisora, who apparently did want to fight for the European title, which was Pulev. Now, I'm not suggesting for 1 second here that Joshua ducked Chisora, don't get me wrong, but I think people should look into that before they start saying that Chisora ducked Joshua. And as I say, I'll come back to that later in the video. So we've got Chisora Pulev for the European title, and it's actually a fight that I really, really like. Let's put the Anthony Joshua thing to one side for a second. This is a very, very good fight. Pulev is viewed as a elite fighter. The vast majority of people have him inside their top 10s. Most people have him around sort of 5th, 6th, 7th. He's a very, very highly rated guy, hugely respected amateur pedigree, Olympic gold medalist, fought Vladimir Klitschko in the world heavyweight title, and to be fair to him, Pulev's only lost once. He's a big guy, 6'5", excellent amateur pedigree, bit of a technician, and some really good form on his resume. Dimitrenko, Ustinov, Tony Thompson, etc, etc. And Pulev, I should imagine, will start this fight as a favourite against Chisora, and I imagine as a quite considerable favourite. Dereck Chisora tends to lose when he steps up to top 15, top 20 level. He's lost obviously to Vitaly Klitschko, David Haye, Tyson Fury, Robert Helenius. For me, Chisora still deserves to be in that conversation of top 20. He's a solid fighter, Chisora. He causes people trouble. He just struggles going up to that elite level. And it would appear, based on Pulev's resume, he may be a step too far for Dereck Chisora. He may just be 1% above the type of grade where Dereck Chisora usually falls short. So it'd be interesting to see. What I think makes this fight really, really interesting, however, is I think stylistically it's a good class. Pulev, for me, is a very effective fighter, but only effective using his own style. And he's limited in terms of his the variations to his game and the different tools he brings to the party. For me, Pulev is nothing more than an outside jabber. He's got a very, very good jab, and he likes to fight long. He's not a guy with great punching power. He's not a very versatile fighter. He's not good on the inside. He's got virtually no inside game. He's very reliant on his range, and that was evident in the Vladimir Klitschko fight. Pulev likes to fight at his own range, and he wouldn't change that range, even when it was clear that standing at that range was going to get him knocked out. And for me, this is why the fight becomes interesting. Because if you look at Pulev's biggest successes, Tony Thompson, Dimitrenko, Ustinov, they're all against very, very tall guys who like to fight behind a jab themselves. Now, Dereck Chisora is an extremely different proposition. Dereck Chisora is a shorter guy. He's not the greatest jabber. He can't jab with Pulev. Chisora is someone who's not going to stand on the outside and play chess with Pulev. He's going to get low. He's going to be using the head movement, peekaboo style tactic, and he's going to try and stifle Pulev, take away Pulev's range, get on the inside, hit him to the body, push him back. And I think that's where stylistically this is an excellent fight. It's like the classic boxer jabber versus mauler brawler style. And to be honest, even though you'd have to lean to Pulev logically, I really don't rule Dereck Chisora out of this fight. Dereck Chisora doesn't have the punch, I don't think, but neither does Pulev. I don't see either man knocking each other out. Dereck Chisora, he may not have the punch distance he once had early on in his career, but he's still a very, very durable guy. He's not an easy guy to knock out. Pulev, he's someone I view as more of a kind of fighter who wears down opponents rather than knocking them out with one punch. Dereck Chisora likewise. I don't see him being a massive puncher. His punches are too wide and a bit slow for me. But I think this is going to come down to... I think Dereck Chisora's shape for this fight will be absolutely key. Because if he turns up undermotivated and in bad shape, he's going to be on the outside. He's going to be eating jabs all night, and it's going to be a long night for him. But if he turns up light, he loses some weight and he turns up really, really primed for this fight, he can cause Pulev a lot of problems. If he gets on Pulev's chest, if he fights him on the inside, if he starts hitting him to the body, Pulev doesn't have much of an inside game, if any. And I think maybe, just maybe, Dereck Chisora can test him in a way that Pulev hasn't been tested in his pro career so far, and can actually cause him a lot of problems. And for me, whilst I'd make Pulev a slight favourite, this is a tight fight and it's a good fight. People out there are saying that Chisora was ducking Joshua. I don't view Chisora as a duck, to be honest. Chisora's fought some of the hardest fights out there. He fought Vitaly Klitschko, an unbeaten Tyson Fury, twice. He fought David Haye on the comeback trail. When Chisora was on the comeback trail, should I say. Took Robert Helenius. He's had some real big fights. And I think that when a fighter has so many options, Chisora clearly had the fight with Joshua, clearly had the fight with Pulev, etc. You can only fight one of them. So if he fought Joshua, would he be ducking Pulev? It's the same with AJ. AJ's talking to Cam, Stavern, Jennings. If he fights the Cam, that doesn't mean he's necessarily ducking Jennings or Stavern. It's just logic. And I don't view Dereck Chisora as a duck. I do view him as a slightly bizarre character. As Eddie Hearn pointed out, was going for some huge percentage of the purse. Dillian White suggested he was after a 50-50 split, which is crazy given the difference in commercial value between Joshua and Chisora. And now Chisora would be fighting for a tenth of the money against Pulev. But, Pulev isn't an easy fight. Going and fighting Pulev in Bulgaria is hardly an easy way out. And whilst it does seem strange to fight Pulev for a tenth of the money, if that is the case, it is the weird and wonderful world of Dereck Chisora. And he is an enigma. He is a character. If Dereck Chisora loses this fight, and to be honest, this is the same for Pulev, it is a long way back. Dereck Chisora has come back from losses time and time again, but he's in his 30s now. He's looked less convincing of late for my money, and another loss here, maybe that would spell the end of him as anything more than a gatekeeper. Having said that, we know what boxing's like. If he causes the upset against Pulev, which I certainly don't rule out if he's motivated and in shape, perhaps he goes on to win. Perhaps he goes on to big things, and I'm sure suddenly real big fights become available to him again in future. And who knows, maybe he can get a massive split with Joshua. It looks like Anthony Joshua's opponents are down to 3, Stavern, Takam and Jennings. All of them huge step ups, top 10 level type fighters. And both of those are going to be, all of those, whoever it is, are going to be real tests for Joshua. If I was managing him, I'd take a fight in between. I think it's a step too soon. But I understand that the pay-per-view model and Eddie Hearn wanting to push for these big shows is probably what's driving that. Which may be the best thing for AJ's wallet, but may not be the best thing for Anthony Joshua's career longevity. Let's change the pace briefly. Luis Ortiz has announced, or intends to announce, he will be fighting Dimitrenko in March. Now, one of the most common questions I get asked on the YouTube channel, on my Facebook, on Twitter, on email, on the comments below is, who do I think heavyweight prospect X should fight next? You can bring in Anthony Joshua, you can bring in Joseph Parker, you can bring in Hughie Fury, even David Haye, returning David Haye. People say to me, Tom, who should David Haye fight next? Who should Anthony Joshua fight next? And every single person who's been asking me that for the last couple of months, I've said Dimitrenko. I think Dimitrenko is an excellent, tough test. Relatively durable, numerically a very good record, but very beatable. Not the slickest boxer, not the biggest puncher. I think that the elite prospects, the decent top 10 fighters can get Dimitrenko out of there. And I expect that Luis Ortiz will find Dimitrenko easy work. I don't see Dimitrenko having much to bother Luis Ortiz. But it's excellent fight for Ortiz to take. Firstly, it's a brilliant fight for preparing for Alexander Usmanov, who's also a giant, such a big guy. But secondly, look at the heavyweight division. Klitschko, Wilder, Fury, they're arguably the top 3 fighters in the division right now. You know, what's the smallest of those guys? 6'6", 6'7". This is a division of giants. And for me, getting that key experience against a man so big is vital. And not a man so big like Gary Cornish, because you don't learn anything from knocking out Gary Cornish in one round. A man so big who's going to jab at you from range and who's going to test you and give you a few rounds. You know, Dimitrenko's a test, but he's very beatable. And he's a key learning fight. Someone like David Haye, who for my money has struggled against taller opponents in the past, it would have been an ideal fight for him. I've always thought it would be a very good matchup for Anthony Joshua or Hughie Fury or Joseph Parker. You know, but Luis Ortiz has got in there first. I think Dimitrenko has won 6 on the bounce since the loss to Pulev, and he'll now fight Luis Ortiz. You know, I don't see him having much to cause Luis Ortiz problems. Previously, he's been durable, but against a lower level of opposition. You know, his best fight was against Pulev, who obviously isn't the biggest puncher in the world. So we'll have to see how durable he is against King Kong. But yeah, it would be good if he could give Ortiz some experience against very tall opponents and guys who are going to fight on the outside for multiple rounds. May be a good learning experience for Luis Ortiz, who is obviously a very accomplished amateur, but still very young in his professional career comparatively. Finally, let's talk briefly to the sad news about Frank Bruno, who is planning a comeback at 54. You know, a few people sent me this today. I don't have too much to say on this, other than I hope it doesn't happen. And if Frank Bruno does make a comeback, I don't begrudge any man a payday, whatever their line of business. But I hope he doesn't get a payday against an Anthony Joshua or a Dereck Chisora or a David Price or a Hughie Fury or someone of that calibre, because, you know, physically the guy looks good. We've all seen the topless photos of him training with Ricky Hatton. You know, physically he still looks capable, but clearly the guy has his demons mentally in terms of his mental health. And, you know, at 54, it's great if you can still go around and look good in the pads. It's great if you can still have a six-pack. But to be honest, looking good on the pads is one thing. Taking a punch from a young prospect like Dillian Whyte or Anthony Joshua is another thing. And I just worry at 54 whether Frank Bruno will suffer permanent long-term health damage if he steps back in the ring. So let's hope it doesn't happen. People asking me, do I think he could have any success given the current state of the heavyweight division? Absolutely not. No, absolutely not. He's been out of the ring for far too long. And 54 years old is simply too old. You know, the boxing scene in the heavyweight division really hot in the UK right now, and Frank Bruno just does not need to be a part of it. You know, leave them hung up, Frank, would be my advice if you're watching the channel. Guys, if you've enjoyed this heavyweight roundup, please do give me the thumbs up, support the channel, I'd appreciate it. I'm going to cover this in more detail. When Chisora Pulev gets made, we'll do a more detailed breakdown. We'll talk about Anthony Joshua's opponent when that's announced next week. We'll do an in-depth breakdown on that. Luis Ortiz, Dimitrenko, I'm sure there'll be another video and a prediction video. I need to rewatch some old Dimitrenko tapes. If you like the sound of those videos, please subscribe to the channel, hit the sub button. I wouldn't want you to miss out of any of those. Many thanks for watching. Hope everyone's good.